Alright everyone, JP the Third with you, and we're back with more Suzerain. Got a busy day ahead of us. Well, we always have a busy day ahead of us. So let's go ahead and head to the desk. Biggest decision on the desk? Well, actually I'll be honest, I already clicked one, but that's just saying that the Nazis won't support our constitutional reform. The NFP and Khazar Kibner. We don't want their support anyway. So that worked out perfectly. Like, guys, you didn't have to tell me. I was hoping that you wouldn't come by. Now, let's go to banned youth organizations. Stability Order of 1954. An investigation on the influence of the Young Swords and the Red Youth organizations on the post-assassination unrest has concluded. Both organizations haven't officially organized or called for illegal action, but several low to mid-level leaders from both have links to insightful actions that led to death, injuries, and instability. This allows us to ban the organizations. Now, I've been hinting all along that I want to take some action here. I want to do something that causes both of these groups to stop. Because we have plenty of intelligence and evidence from crime reports and people that have been arrested that there are people financing them, the different groups, giving them weapons and doing whatever they can to help them kill each other. But the fact that it really does, at least from all of our reports, it only goes to the lower and middle level. I've been thinking about this since a few turns ago, a few videos ago, because I knew this order was coming up, and in my first playthrough ever, I banned them both. And I still got the ending I wanted, so I was happy with it. But since we're trying to be more centrist, and we're trying to build a capitalist economy, the best thing we can do, I think, right now is not to... Because these organizations go way back. So what I want to do, and... Let's see. The filthy capitalist slash Tory part of me just really wants to just ban them both and clean house. But for now, we will not act. And because the last few reports have shown that things were getting calmer. Hopefully that will continue without the government having to take action. So we will leave it alone. For the record, I want to ban everybody. Like, oh, all of y'all are causing problems here. All of y'all can go. So, but we are going to play this as smart as possible. And sometimes you just gotta say, you know what? We'll get the ones that stand out. So far, the police have been doing a good job on that. But other than that, we will leave alone other dissidents. So, finalization of the drafted constitutional changes. I was walking to my office as today was the day to edit and make the final changes for the proposal to change the Constitution of Sordland. The Reform Committee finally bore tangible results, and the draft of the changes were about to be presented to me. I walked in the marble corridors of the palace, thinking about the huge decision I was going to take. At the entrance to my office, my secretary Livia greeted me. Good morning, Mr. President. How are you today? Fine, thank you. More importantly, how are you, sir? Like, you can really, like, this game really lets you be a bastard if you want to. We'll keep it professional. We may be capitalist pigs here, but we're honorable capitalist pigs. We just want to make our money. I'm perfectly fine. Good to hear. She paused before taking my coat. It looked like she had something on her mind. Mr. Rayne, can you give me a hint about your reform plans? If you ask me, taking away the judge's immunity is long overdue, but it might anger a lot of people in these halls. You'll find out with the rest of Sordland, sweetheart. I'll go back to stacking my paper. That didn't sound right at all. I'll take that into consideration. I hope you'll keep me informed. I'll take your coat now. Olivia left to hang up my coat. I entered my office and sat down. Not long after, Peter, Lucian, and Neo arrived. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning. Time to finally get this proposal going. Peter placed the draft in front of me. After your modifications, we will be starting the process. Can we go over each of the points that are in discussion for the draft? Well, apart from the first two sections of decreasing the Supreme Court's authority and limiting the presidential vetoes, nothing else has been agreed on unanimously. We could start talking about Section 3. This is about the impeachment process of the president. Currently, in cases of high treason and breaking the Constitution, the Supreme Court may impeach and try the president. Yeah, one body that is pretty much on its own and protected, and completely loyal to Tark and Saul. Sure. Most reformers want the impeachment to be initiated by the Assembly. They think they do not have any power over potential rogue presidents that would abuse their power. The Assembly should have oversight over the president. It is the most democratic institution. This law is particularly dangerous for you in this case. We will be going against the old guard, and if we prove to be successful in the Assembly, they'll be looking for anything they can declare. They will be looking for anything they can declare unconstitutional to tackle you. All they need is the Supreme Court to impeach you. We can even remove impeachment altogether. Let's not. What if we don't succeed? The court can have me impeached for this. Yes, they are already trying to hit you since they are aware about the current wind of change. But we aim to cooperate with some of the judges to make sure that doesn't happen. We will make sure the old guards won't control the court any longer, Mr. President. Section 4. This is regarding the appointment of ministers. Currently, the president is free to appoint anyone from the members of the Assembly. Nobody else is involved in the process. So let's take a second while we're going through this to kind of explain Sordland's political system, which is really jacked up. So essentially, Anton Rayne is both a member of the National Assembly, a voting member of the National Assembly, and the president, because you have to be the party member, the party leader, and a member in good standing with the Assembly to run for president. So you get to keep your legislative privileges and your presidential privilege. It is extraordinarily jacked up, and it was designed strictly to keep Tark and Saul in power as long as possible, which is why the only reason he retired, rather, is because his party finally turned against him. But it is the Constitution hyper overpowers the president, if that is even a turn of phrase. It has to, the reforms we're making are absolutely necessary. This is definitely a demand to involve the Assembly in the process. We could introduce a confidence vote. That was my suggestion as well. I'm sure the reformers will completely support that. The fifth section is about our infamous electoral threshold. Most reformers want to lower the threshold as much as possible. Mr. Richter and his PFJP definitely wants to see changes on this topic. They find our 10% threshold to be anti-democratic, which is something I also agree with. Yes, but this is a delicate matter. The party, and I mean not even Albin, wants us to change the threshold. They think that this will destroy our party in the long term. Not wrong. The 10% threshold is what has allowed us to control half of the Assembly with only a 30% majority in elections. I'll go with this one. But the high threshold is the reason why Sordish politics has become isolated to this degree. You're right. Even after Saul's resignation, we still have 3 parties in the Assembly. Even Mr. Kibner's NFP was barely elected. And don't forget that the Communist Party and the Workers' Party of Bludia both had close to 10% of the vote in the last election. You will be opening their way into the parliament in the future if you were to decrease the threshold. It is important that you realize this. Of course, that would also mean that USP might lose its majority in the Assembly, sir. If our own democracy is the reason of our downfall, we will have to accept it. I agree with you, Mr. President. Lucian continued with the next section. Section 6. This is about the presidential decrees. Reformists demand more limitation to the president's executive powers. Mr. Rector has demanded them to be completely removed. I suggested to bring some limitation to degrees regarding their acceptability, or applicability, excuse me. While we keep them, we should try to make sure that they will only be used in emergency situations. We could also make it dependent on an enabling act from the Assembly. Sure, it would make the whole process longer, but as long as we have a majority, nothing really changes. We'll work with the reformers to limit the use of decrees. Yeah, like a lot of this... excuse me. Just, got a little choked up there. But yeah, a lot of this stuff is just like basic, and I understand like a lot of this is going to be getting conservative and moderates who are closer to solist to agree with us. But kind of the brilliance of this game is showing like the basic stuff we take for granted in a democratic system, how easily it can be twisted, just in the name of order. Friends will probably demand that we remove them completely, but he forgets that Sordland is a presidential republic. The next one is Section 7, term limits. I don't aim to leave anytime soon. We'll keep the unlimited term limits. I want to be here forever. Nah. Term limits are necessary. I agree. We can't allow somebody like Saul holding on to his seat for 2 decades again. Hey, if people keep electing one person, that means they really are content. The masses are scared of change. Even Saul knew he had to leave, but we will leave it to the president to decide. I will take my time and seriously consider the options before settling on one. Now I'll move on to the 8th section. We are reaching the end. It is a question about the immunity of the judges. While the anti-old guard sentiment is increasing, there are talks that taking away their immunity will give us authority over judiciary. Or the judiciary. I do not support taking away their power for yourself, Mr. President. The judiciary must be independent and long-lasting. While I agree that the current court members are problematic, this is no way to resolve it. The law is supposed to ensure the judiciary's independence by giving legal protection so they can't be pressured. Well, they need absolute immunity in theory. But look at what reality got us. We got to deal with the most corrupt Chief Justice in the world, with no chance to deal with him. They should be able to be impeached. Why do they get to be impeached, but not them? Exactly! Thank you, Peter, our oldest and dearest friend. But it would be tougher to persuade the judges with this. Mrs. Edmonds may not want to cooperate with you if they believe you're going to get rid of them afterwards. And the last one is the question about Saul's legacy. Basically his member of honor law. It gave him absolute immunity even when he's retired. He is a permanent member of the Assembly as well, but luckily he doesn't really attend anymore. According to the Constitution, the member of honor not only has legal immunity, but the state also covers most of their expenses as well as providing security of all times. It can only be given to someone by an absolute majority vote in the Assembly and the approval of the President. That's why only Tarkin Saul has that title. He gave it to himself right after his military coup. The law is basically made to save the colonel, and it has symbolic importance for Sordland because of it. We must get rid of the senseless law that protects him. He should be able to face justice for the atrocities that have taken place during his rule. We could keep the title, but take away the immunity clause. That would be enough to hold him accountable for his actions, but why would you want to keep such a title, Mr. President? Well, regardless of him, I see no problem with having a special title for great heroes. Well, regardless of what Mr. Rayne decides, we will need to work together to push this agenda. I thank you all for your input. Alright. So that was a long kind of process. But I think we're getting to a more democratic system. So let's see what we got. According to this is first on presidential vetoes, according to section 77 and 82. Like, I think we are really spoiled, at least in the United States. Our Constitution is maximum on regular printed paper, maybe 10 pages. And we're on just section 77 and 82 of their Constitution. Question in Article 77 and 82, the President may veto a bill by returning it to the Assembly with a written statement. The articles does not contain any information on how to override a veto. As a consequence, the President has an absolute veto power that cannot be overridden by the Grand National Assembly under any circumstances. We will limit the veto to a 3/5 majority, something that's far more democratic. Section 2, Constitutional Amendment Process. According to Article 5 of the Constitution, an amendment may be proposed by members of the Assembly with at least 150 signatures, a 2/3 majority vote in the Grand National Assembly, and a simple majority vote in the Supreme Court is required for the amendment. As a consequence, the Supreme Court, which is not part of the elected legislative branch, has enormous power in the amendment process. We are getting rid of that. That's not even up for debate. Section 3, Impeachment Process. According to Article 17, the President of Sordland is not responsible for the actions performed in the exercise of presidential duties, except for in the case of high treason or violation of the Constitution, which all favors the President. In such cases, the President may be impeached by the Supreme Court in joint session with an absolute majority of his members. Therefore, the impeachment process only includes the Supreme Court, and it gives him great power over the executive. We will split. I think it's. Nah. We're going to take the Supreme Court out of it entirely. If I remember, I'm thinking back over my last run, we have to completely remove their legislative authority. It's the only way. They should focus just on the law and nothing but the law. They can always come back around. Section 4, Appointment of Ministers. According to the Constitution, the President appoints the members of the ministers to the Council of Ministers from elected members of the Assembly. This requires no confidence vote from the Grand National Assembly. So we will just do a confidence vote. The President may nominate ministers, which requires a confidence vote from the Grand National Assembly for their appointment. That's a little bit better and fitting with the presidential system. The second option is more along the lines of premiership. And even though the vice president kind of acts like the prime minister, we don't officially have one. So we'll stick to the presidential order. Section 5, Electoral Threshold. According to Article 50, a political party needs a minimum of 10% of the total national vote to win seats in the Grand National Assembly. The votes of the parties who pass the threshold are redistributed proportionally, meaning USP, which currently holds the lead, would be the main beneficiary. So a 3% threshold will not work. There's just no way. But both as a matter of promoting democracy and as a matter of just basic Republican idealism, we'll push for a threshold of 8%. We should be able to use that. If nothing else, we can use that as a negotiating point. And we'll have a clause in there that also works as a negotiating point for us. But if we can try and get this supported, we should. Section 6, Presidential Decrees. According to Article 18 and 51, the President is able to issue decrees on political, social, and economic issues, which we've been doing all game, that will carry the force of law. They cannot contradict the Constitution and are subject to judicial review, again, giving the Supreme Court enormous power. Therefore, the President may issue decrees on many subjects without going to the Grand National Assembly. However, the Assembly may pass legislation on the same subjects to override the presidential decree. We will just have an enabling act. So I can do something. Well, I'll just read it. The President will not be able to issue decrees that will carry the force of law without an enabling act from the Grand National Assembly. So I can say, hey, I want to do this, and I want to do this right now, and then they can vote on it. It prolongs the process. And this is where kind of the centrist part of our centrist run comes in. Removing decrees right now, totally at this time, is not going to fully work. But we're going, because we will lose a lot of our conservative support in the USP. But giving them more power over it will definitely help. Section 7, term limits. According to the Constitution, the President shall be elected for 4 years. However, there is no mention of a term limit, allowing one individual to be able to run, be elected, and serve as President without limits, which Arkansas did for 20 years. 5 terms. We're going to do 2 terms. Section 8, immunity of judges. The Constitution gives the justices of the Supreme Court total immunity and describes no procedure of impeachment, making them untouchable by other branches of government. The Supreme Court justice. Now, this impeachment clause is interesting. The Supreme Court justices may be proposed to be impeached on the legal grounds of unconstitutional behavior. A valid impeachment proposal will require 2/3 majority decision of the Grand National Assembly to impeach the individual judges. That is. Love to do it. But if I remember correctly, I don't think we get anything through if we leave that clause in. At least for now, again, keeping with the centrist run, eventually, like in years to come, if we make the process easier to reform the Constitution, someone will remove their immunity. Because everybody should be checked by somebody. But just what we're doing now, removing their legislative authority, we'll have to do. So we'll leave that alone. Section 9, honorary membership of Arkansas. Article 99 of the Constitution defines the Member of Honor title, its appointment procedure, as well as the rights that their members may exercise. The Member of Honor has absolute immunity and is considered to be a permanent member of the Grand National Assembly. They are given control of their own personal security team, provided by the state's presidential guards. The member is also eligible to live in a special private residence provided by the state for free. The only person that holds this title is Arkansas. We will not get the conservatives on board by completely abolishing it. As much as I agree with Nia Morgan on this, there's simply no way. I know that one from experience. But what we may be able to get through is abolishing the immunity. We'll keep the title like that. It can just be like honorable people of Sordland can get the title, and we'll deign some property for them that they can have and they can be protected. But that is the best way to go about it, I think. You're about to make constitutional changes for Sordland. Are you sure about your decisions? Wait, no. Let's go back and make sure we're clear. So we're not going to have impeachment for judges, 2 terms for the president, enabling that for all presidential decrees. We're decreasing the threshold to 8%. Again, that's going to be our bargaining chip. We may be able to use it to get everything through if we can't get it through on its own. Confidence vote required for the cabinet. The Assembly can impeach the president alone. Only the Assembly, the Supreme Court, is out of the business of impeachment. They are out of the business of voting on constitutional amendments. And we are limiting vetoes as well, so that 3/5 of the Assembly can override me. Or override the president. Let's put it like that. Well, this is not a desperate run. After I made the final changes for the proposal, I showed it to my team. They read the changes and discussed it amongst themselves. Lucian spoke afterwards. Looks like the amendments are ready to be proposed. But I have to say this too. The new electoral threshold will really be difficult for the party to accept. Our guys are not fond of that idea. That's true. It'll be tough to get all of their support. Some of our members may try to openly fight against this. I am prepared to reconsider if it comes to that. We will all do our best to make it work, sir. Any other comments before we proceed? I don't think I have any problems with the changes. Me neither. Looks like we can proceed immediately. I will personally work on the wording of this proposal with my hand-picked legal experts. With Ms. Morgan's reputation as the most experienced attorney, this proposal will be bulletproof. Chief Justice Orso, or that should be Chief Justice Hawker. Chief Justice Hawker will have a hard time convincing others to oppose it. In the meantime, you must introduce this proposal to our party. You will need to get them to back us if we want to pass the Assembly. Sir, I advise you first talk to the leaders of both the conservative and reformist wings of the party. As far as I'm aware, Mr. Clavin supports the reforms already. Mrs. Tory will be the real problem. She became the real heavyweight after we left for the executive. Gloria Tory. Man, a lot of people on the, from the other playthroughs I've seen, there are people on the fence about Mrs. Tory, who's the Speaker of the Assembly. I like her. Like, she is... She's definitely, like, if this was a parliamentary republic, she would have been prime minister by now. Definitely very strong Iron Lady vibes from Gloria Tory. And that's not just because of her name. Any advice in regards to dealing with them? As Mrs. Victor said, Mr. Clavin will probably be easier to persuade. We need to unite the party under this, so his support is vital. Mrs. Gloria will be tougher to break. The problem is that she's capable of turning the moderates and the conservatives against us. As much as I don't want to say this, if she makes demands to change the proposal, you may need to give in. That is the one that breaks a lot of people. They think, I don't have to give in. I'm going to make my deals work, no matter what. And that is not Suzerain. Suzerain is a completely different political simulator. You don't just get to make decisions with no pushback. But we'll see. I'm hoping that I included enough here to where we can negotiate with Mrs. Tory. And if as long as we get the speaker aligned, Clavin aligned, and Richter aligned, just on those votes alone, we have more than enough to get through the assembly. Thanks for the advice. Wish you good luck, sir. I wish you good luck with the party, sir. I think we can end the meeting here. We all shook hands and they left the room. I've signed the draft constitutional change package to reform the country. Nice. Let's go political overview right quick. But yeah, just a reminder for everybody, 250 seats in the assembly. We need 166 votes to get through here. We're going to have the independents and the PFJP already, so that's 80. Half of 130 is what, 65? 65. So we're going to have the reformists in our rings already, so 65. That we are starting this with my bad math on our side with 145 votes, which means we need 20 more. We can very easily do this just based on everything we've done so far. So Gloria Tory is just going to be the icing on the cake. We get the speaker on board, we have the votes. And what's funny to me is that a lot of people don't do that legislative math. And they do little things along the way to tick people off. But yeah, if you're doing the math correctly and just lobbying correctly and you're making the moves, at least in this playthrough correctly, of the 166 votes you need, you're starting with 145. So all you need to do is not piss anybody off, and you're good. Piss off the communists, not the communists, but the Nazis. That's fine. Let them be ticked off. I don't care what they think. But you're already starting halfway there. More than halfway there. So it's the constitutional reform, the Supreme Court is the hardest part because of the old guard's control. You need the centrists, you got the reformists, you need all the centrists, and you need, no, this is absolute majority. So you just need the centrists and the reformists. After that, it's, the old guard can kick rocks. But and that's why I made their powers strictly judicial. Because the centrists will appreciate just having to work on the law and not being the supreme force of protecting Tarkansas's legacy. But we'll see. So far, I like this constitutional strategy. I've never seen it explained, but that's really the reason for it. And if you do a more despotic run, or if you lean closer to communism or nationalism, the math changes, of course. You can work the assembly in certain ways to keep with you, as long as you convince most of the USP that they will stay in power. But if you're doing a Democrat run or, my centrist run, the best way to go about it is that way. And like I said, you start just about there. So there's really, the only way you can screw it up is if your decision making as president doesn't align with your values. Like if you say, I'm going to be a capitalist and we're going to promote the free market, but then you do absolutely nothing to promote the free market or support industries, or like with the project, like if you do the road project in ag land instead of the highway project, that doesn't really support the industries. That's just a social project, more or less. And like I said before, you can get that anyway. So and I'm semi-ranting here, but that's why. Richter's victory over Rayne. Editorial. An editorial post from from Sordland today, Heart of Sordland. Our sources inform us that the plans underway by the government to start drafting the reform package. The Rayne administration has reached out to the PFJP, led by Franz Richter, despite his history of criticizing and opposing the USP, even calling Rayne yet another pawn that was put forward as a candidate during the campaign elections of 1953. It is the first time in the USP government that a president is cornered to work with his unapologetic rivals to this extent. If anything significant can come out of this collaboration, it's yet to be seen. If USP isn't capable of showing strength like it used to, and are forced to accept the demands of their longtime rivals, perhaps it is time to realize that their time has passed. Basically, if you're not another dictator, and if they don't mean it, they're just mad at me for not working with them, or not being corrupt. But that's fine with me. Whatever. Lockhaven times. Preparations on the way for the annual Benfey Festival. It's that time of year again, the largest cultural festival in the entirety of Sordland. Benfey Festival has begun its preparations. This year's venue is pegged to be the newly built Benfey High Art Center, with a total capacity of 8,000 people. For those who do not have tickets, can, as always, enjoy the events that span the whole city. Especially after the recent events, we can't wait for 4 days of panels, theater plays, exhibition, and music. No other news for the time. We will get into this because there's actually the Helgeland conflict. We can kind of influence on the periphery, but we can't actively get involved in it. If there's DLC or a sequel to this, that, I want that to be the main thing. I want to get involved in the Helgeland dispute. Vice President Vector reported that along with Lucian Gallade, the committee had started working on the written aspects of the package. As per the needs outlined previously, they will soon get the legal team involved to complete the writing process. The need 150 signatures for a proposal has started to be collected within the USP. Dinner with the Business Council members. I'm sure this will be a lovely evening. And the track that is literally titled Scandal in the Suzerain OST is playing for no reason at all. We were in Lockhaven to work with the Business Council to assess weaknesses in the economy. Simon organized a dinner with the affluent economic figureheads of Sordland. When we arrived, the streets were bustling with activity even though the atmosphere of the country was tense. Lockhavenians didn't seem very worried. Together with Walter Tusk, Edith Agnock, Mikhail Lavin, and Simon Hall, we entered a renowned Asteria restaurant by the coast. Edith Agnock is a Sordish economist and banker who served as the chairwoman of the Central Bank of Sordland. She was the first woman to hold that position. She also became the first woman to serve as president of a bank in the world. And Sordland is the adopted daughter of the first president of the Republic, Ardo Wissy. Now, this is actually my first time reading her backstory. I love this, by the way. Again, I said it before, I say it again. Spend the first hour reading as much of the codex as you can. It is a lot, but it informs you. But her backstory, I didn't know. Interesting. I'm not going to read all this, but read it as in. That's Simon, our friend and economic minister. Mikhail the Wolf Alvin is a businessman, economist, and statesman who serves as co-chair of the National Business Council. I'm surprised he's not our friend too, because he went to the Lockhaven Business School at the same time we did. But I love the depth of history here and just the backstories and everything that's going on. The fact that they put so much thought into how every person in this game plays into the world is just absolutely brilliant. I can't praise it enough. A short blonde man whose embroidered pocket red manager greeted us and waved his arms in excitement as he told us how pleased he was to have us in the establishment. Beaming with pride, he led us to a private room and got us seated at a large table covered for the occasion with a maroon tablecloth. We were quickly served by a group of servers. Walter spoke as they started taking our orders. I recommend the Lockhaven salmon, President. You have to taste the local delicacy here, the best in Sordland. I appreciate the advice, but I don't like salmon. I think the rest of this is just first, how can you not like salmon? I'm sure there are people who don't, but wow, that's all I gotta say. We're gonna order it, and this is traditional Sordish bean stew. If you're doing a socialist route or a Malianist route, you should go with this just so that you're a simple man of the people. Lesbian pasta doubles down on your capitalist points. Lockeman salmon is just good. I ordered the Lockeman salmon for the main course. The servers took their notes and asked us about the second dish. We'll go with a salad. I'm saying this like I'm about to. The servers placed glasses in front of us, in front of each of us, and served bread and water. After they were done taking orders, they quickly left us alone in the private room. Mr. President, I didn't have the possibility to thank you for coming today. Your presence means a great deal. Indeed, sir. It is an honor to dine with you. It is great to be here with the members of the Business Council. We should thank Simon for organizing this meeting. No need for that. Hope everybody enjoys the evening. Simon gestured at the expensive-looking red wine bottle that one of the servers had just brought to the table. Mr. President, that looks amazing. Well, it tastes even better. Best of Lesbia, the Chateau de Falanco, 1934. Simon poured some wine in my glass and waited for me to taste it before filling up. I took a sip. It was bitter. Honestly, it tastes like any other wine. How is it? Is it taste to your liking? It tastes like any other wine. I could completely whiff this if I wanted to. Where's this go? It's fine. It's fine. What? This wine doesn't even need testing. Should I fill your glass, or would you like another drink, sir? It's okay. I'll drink it. Simon filled up the glass. I think that's the most honest, like, because I could completely whiff it, or I could lie and just pander to their expensive taste because they just got an expensive. Clearly, these guys just got an expensive bottle without actually knowing anything about wine. But that is beside the point. After filling down everyone's glasses, Simon stood up and raised his glass. I'd like to raise a toast to all of you here today. We're meeting here tonight in difficult times, but I believe that with hard work, cooperation, and trust, we'll get through this period as well. I'd like to thank Mr. Rayne again for his decisiveness when it comes to economic policies. I'm sure we will stop this recession. I also thank Mr. Tusk for being here with us today. His presence is an honor. And of course, my colleagues from the Business Council, Mrs. Agnock and Mr. Oven. Without you, none of these would have been possible. Let's drink to future cooperation and growth. For a prosperous Sordland. Everyone raised their glasses and toasted each other. After a couple more minutes, the server arrived with our meals. The food tasted amazing. Walter was right. This place must have been the best place in all of Lockhaven. So, how did you find the food at the best fine dining restaurant in Lockhaven, Mr. President? This can't get old. It's an experience. The chef must be tipped. Fine food is like fine art, but this particular one is a masterpiece. I know exactly what you mean. Art is something else. It embodies so much about us in the world surrounding our lives. And food can... There is an art of everything. Art of making money, food, wine, and love. I was just going to interrupt our girl like that, really? How are things going in the Maroon Palace? The pressure must have increased after you attended the funeral. It did, but it was the right decision. Of course, I didn't mean to criticize your decision. As we conversed with Mikhail, I heard Walter raise his voice in apparent argument with Edith and Simon. We both stopped to listen. Arcadia knows the right way of doing business. Their approach to the world is real and raw. I prefer that cutthroat approach in comparison to the niceties. Well, I mean, it's a nice country to visit too. I've traveled there often in business trips. The attitude on all countries are nice to visit if you have the cash. Knowing her background, that is a whole different statement. I could just let them argue. I could side with. Certainly not all. Half the globe isn't worth our time or nor attention. Wow, Walter. That won't change unless profitability increases. Walter's classic absolutes. But I do agree with you investment-wise. There are only a select group of countries that guarantee a return on investment. Talking of which, we are preparing to our visit to Agnolia and Wayland, where we will meet their governments to settle our trade negotiations. Make sure to lay a good foundation for our negotiations to start on. Our talented team is led by Mr. Weesey, as well as the knowledge and extensive connections will aid in our endeavor. By the way, I saw that underhaul construction has already started with the railway construction. And that project will surely boost our economy. The mood is already very positive. I have to congratulate Mr. Rayne for starting such a massive project. We will be humble on this term. No need for that, Mr. Arlen. The state is just doing its job. Of course. And Mr. Hall also deserves credit, of course. Our great economy minister. Is there a joke coming? Why? I thought you said you were great at economy. At the economy? You laughed. I heard you brought a new villa, Simon. I don't comment on rumors, but I will make an exception since we are among friends. It's true. So, even with the economy and the state it's in, some people just are determined and destined to get richer, I suppose. Almost makes you want to agree with CR, excuse me. You're doing a great job, so you deserve it. He is one of the hardest working ministers in the government. He has surely deserved it. Wars give the motivation to ensure people go that extra mile. It depends on who you work for. We're talking about rewards. It is a fact that the government pays far less than the private sector. And that's true, but that was a change made on purpose to push for improvements from the inside. Edith, who was sitting to my left, gently put her hand over my arm for a few minutes. Come on, let's not talk about finance and politics for now. We came here to relax. She turned to Walter and Simon. Isn't that right, gentlemen? A deft touch here. They nodded at her and took a sip from their drinks. She slightly leaned towards me. Ma'am, I am married and my wife would kill you. She wouldn't even, kill me. She'd just kill you. So, Mr. Rayne, why don't you tell us what's behind that strong character of yours? I heard that you were brought up in the capital and experienced all the power shifts as it happened. Is that right? It must have been tough. It was difficult times in the capital, but I learned a lot about politics. It all makes sense now. I never met your family, Mr. President. How are they doing, if you don't mind me asking? We don't talk much since I became president. It can happen. Sometimes work can get in the way. Don't stress yourself over it. Family is everything. My advice would be to make sure that Franca has a solid relationship with you. He is your future, after all. He is going through the teenager period. It's difficult to connect with him. He's a little shy. I wish that was my son's biggest problem. Darren seems to be doing fine. Outside of his yacht party in Benzie made the local news. Well, the rascal didn't even ask for permission to use the yacht, and he just took it. He basically stole it. Good news is that I finally convinced him to go to university. He'll study economics in Lockerbie Business School. That's a good choice. Having a degree in Sordland separates you from the rabble. We certainly need more people who understand economics. Talking of which, it's great that we have another leader who actually studied economics and understands it, like Mr. Alfonso. His political affair nearly involved us. We are in private. This shouldn't get out. Alfonso was an inspiration for all reformists. He truly wanted to transform this country to a modern nation. This term was very difficult, though. He got destroyed. A correction. It wasn't his policies that destroyed him. It was the old guard. I always had a good feeling about his sudden fall. He threatened their economic power base over the country through a vast privatization plan. They removed him and backed you after. Walter, stop with the conspiracy theories. I think we've had enough drinks. Everyone went quiet. After a long silence followed by some chit-chat, Walter ordered a bottle of whiskey. That is one good-looking bottle. Waiter brought one of the finest Arcadian whiskeys. It's time for a toast. I stood up to give the toast. To an equal society without class differences. Oh, man. You want to talk about troll. If you just... you want to piss everybody off after that dinner. That is how you do it. Jesus Christ. To a constructive and beneficial future. May our differences be set aside for a good future. They say hope dies last. To the future. Raised. I think it's time we call it a night. Edith stood up. Most of us were a little tipsy at this point. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for joining us, and you, Simon, for putting all of this together. I am going to go with this. Because I'm drunk and I can get away with the joke. Thank you, Edith, for joining with a bunch of ugly rich men. And that is definitely not me, the president of jokes. Thanks for being here. After bidding our farewells, we slowly walked out of the restaurant. The moon was shining bright as everyone except Walter left in their luxury cars. President, a moment alone, please. He called me inside the small VIP lounge. I'll follow him inside. Usually the Lothburg spokesman doesn't directly comment on the administration, but I'd like to say a few things since this was a special evening. Go ahead, I'm all ears. Like, I think you could talk to people, you're not corrupt for talking to people, you're corrupt if you agree with them. Talk, but if they offer something ridiculous or they ask you to do something that you can't do, just say no. Should be simple enough, but not everybody can do that. Finally, a president that listens to the people. It won't be easy to pass a new constitution through the Assembly and the Supreme Court. We could help you get it through, if you, in return, help us with a few economic requests. Walter lit his cigar and took a few drafts before continuing. The consensus is that we see eye to eye in the economic direction you have taken by promoting a market economy. I'm glad that the group is supportive of the decision, and was calculated. There are many who put their trust in you. Walter smiled. He looked me in the eye. You rejected our previous discreet offer to pick Underhall Construction for the execution of the first mega infrastructure project. However, you still made the right choice. Your party not getting that donation is unfortunate enough. Unfortunate, though. Why someone wouldn't want that money is beyond me. We are aware of the upcoming tax meeting, and it will be a step in the right direction if private corporations would get a tax cut. Excuse me. To boost the economy with job creation, of course. And the positive side effects would be our support to the administration throughout the entire term. See? It's that simple. Just tell corrupt businessmen no. It's just that easy. I will make tax decisions objectively. I can't promise you anything. Oh, let's not be hasty. The recession will end if Lothburg is on your side, President. Why can't we all just be friends? I don't think so. I have other plans for the economy. That is a shame. I did offer you a peace branch. There was an awkward silence. Either way, President, we're here and always ready to work with you if you change your mind. Don't forget that. And that's what I want right there. Again, you don't have to be rude. You don't have to mock him. Just be independent and stand your ground. He will respect that, unlike Karanti, who's trying to destroy me in the press. I will think about it, but not now. Walter left and Sergei came to pick me up. I entered the car and we drove to our residence in Lakovit. Sergei took the seaside route. Because here's the thing you gotta remember. They can pull their money at any time. These are the most well-connected and wealthy people in the entire country. If I'm rude to them or treat them as if they are just a piggy bank for me to smash over and over again to try and save my own ass, that will create problems. They can pull their money at any time, and then the economy really will be in a downturn. I'm promoting a market economy. They're going to be fine through that. But I'm going to be an independent politician as well and make my own decisions. Car bomb attack in Arvery. No perpetrators have been found connected to the incident so far. Further investigations are going on. So we don't know who caused the car bomb. School poisoning connected to Blutish woman. Oh, we got this report in the last video. Vilmasa Asir, who was working in the school kitchen, was apprehended with connections to last week's school cafeteria poisoning in Ribble. The act was found to be politically motivated as the perpetrators are connected to the banned Blutish Freedom Party. Asir is suspected to have been an active member of the Blutish Freedom Front since the start of the year. She's been sentenced to 60 years in prison. Sentenced to 60 years in prison. I got that out. But yeah, throw the book at her. She poisoned kids. Like, yeah. Bill on the rights of workers being drafted. The Grand National Assembly of Sordland will vote on a bill on Thursday to protect workers' rights in Sordland. That supporters are calling the most ambitious pro-labor legislation in decades, and which one USP representative has dismissed as the worst bill in the Assembly. I'm sure he did. The Workers' Protection Act has strong support from both the PFJP and the NFP as well as labor leaders. The bill was a result of bipartisan efforts from the leading figures of the PFJP as well as the Ministry of Health, led by Pascal Benawal. It was proposed to the Assembly by Representative Alvin Clavin from the USP. The Workers' Protection Act amends the Labor Act by establishing a minimum wage of 2.5 Sordish Rin per hour and adding guidelines on overtime work as well as safety and protection guidelines. It also extends the rights of the workers to all migrants, acknowledging their rights as workers in Sordland. The bill also makes it illegal for corporations to force workers to do unpaid overtime work. Like the basics. We're covering the basics here. And that's still hard for some countries. Companies who fail to abide by these rules established with the bill will be heavily fined by the government and may be forced to face legal action. Some estimates suggest costs for those firms would increase by 50% if they have to treat workers according to the proposed laws. Despite the bill coming from the governing USP, it faces huge opposition inside the party. However, with the support of PFJP and NFP, the bill has a high chance of passing the Assembly. President meets with Business Council. Our sources has reported that yesterday President Rayne had a meeting with the Business Council behind closed doors in Lockavin, which later continued with a dinner in a 5-star Asteria restaurant with leading figures from the council. Just doing everything in their power to make me look bad. The agenda of the meeting was not disclosed and the contents of the meeting remain a secret, but it can be expected that President Rayne has discussed the future economic plans of his administration as well as listening to the concerns of the leading industry figures. The outcome of the meeting will hopefully arrive quickly with positive developments and more transparency compared to today. Well, they gave me a little something there. I'll take it. Morrible mine disaster. Disaster in Morrible last night when one of the main support shafts in the Morrible coal mine collapsed, trapping many coal miners inside. The collapsing structure also started an underground fire, turning the sky black with ash and sorrow in Morrible today. As reported by the government, the current death toll sits at 112. Jesus. Dead, with other miners still trapped inside. Rescue operations are continuing without any sleep. Investigators have told us that this might have happened due to neglect of the Nedum mining group. Families of miners and people of Morrible shut up in protest at the site of the disaster. Coincidentally, the workers' right bill that has been drafted in the Assembly for the past few months comes too late. Now the Sordland are now turning to President Rayne to see his decision on the bill. Yeah. Too little, too late. Usually, unfortunately, that's what happens with politics. I'm just clicking stuff, I apologize. But hopefully, we're definitely going to support the legislation. We should have the budget to do it. Because I think there is a budget cost to it, but we're still going to support it. Jesus. But it's just, this game does not let up, man. It just does not let up. Budget allocation with the government of Sordland. We'll do this because this is a pretty important decision. And that will lead into the next stream. The preparations for the government budget were finished. Most of the cabinet gathered in the White Room for the important occasion. Nearly half a year has passed since my inauguration. The cabinet looked overworked. I would like to use this opportunity for a statement. Of course, sir. We are doing great work, and this is just the beginning. There will be many more good things to come. The ministers look somewhat motivated by my statement. Thank you, sir. Sadly, Peter Vector and Gus Manger and David Weesey won't be attending the meeting. They're working on the upcoming trade agreements with Valen and Agnolia. May the Lord be with them. Ciara gave a barely disguised eye roll. Did you just roll your eyes at me, young lady? If I did, it's because religion has no place at a government budget meeting. I believed in somebody else's stream I described Ciara as a hardcore pants-wearing communist. I am sticking with that. I was merely expressing my wishes for a successful trade deal. Freedom of expression must be protected at all costs. Must it not, Miss Morgana? Actually, in this case, I agree with Miss Walda. Ciara flashed her an appreciative smile. According to Sordland's laws regarding the separation of church and state, she broke off as she noticed that Simon, Lucian, and Joseph were all looking at the three female ministers in stony silence. Ladies, let's leave the extraneous chit-chat for afternoon tea. Lucian, you got this one. I don't think I can add anything to that comment. I refrained from making a comment. Simon started loudly shuffling some documents around. I'll ask turned to the Minister of Economy. Thanks to Simon's expertise, I'm sure we will achieve many great things today. Thank you for the compliment. Today is a big day. We must prioritize our spending wisely in order to achieve the goals we set as a government, while maintaining enough political support, if I may add. Promises were made during the election. There are three options regarding the budgeting of the four main branches of the government. It's either we increase, maintain, or decrease funding. Increasing will result in an improvement of the branch, which will unlock new policy options. Maintaining will keep the funding, resulting in no visible change. Decreasing causes a loss of efficiency in that branch. Moving away from big government is the right choice. I agree with that in spirit, but I don't want Ciara to kill me. I can just imagine like being halfway through that sentence and just her letter opener or something just flying across the table. Like, you killed the president over what? Can we rely on the private sector to support us? I'm sure we can do that to a certain extent in some branches like education and health. Our universal healthcare system must be protected and not be tainted by private greed or interest. We need to be considerate when making such grand choices that have ripple effects. We have to be careful as to what we fund so we have resources remaining for another investment project. We have to keep true to the election promises. Our people voted for us because of the promises we made, as much as we realistically can. If we fail at improving our economy, the promises won't mean much in the big picture. Before we begin our discussion, there is one more thing that I want to voice my opinion on. As we manage the government budget, we are obviously able to go into debt to invest in different branches. Although debt is a possibility, under these circumstances, it would dent our financial system, worsening the economic crisis if we push it too far. A point from me as well to everyone before the discussion. Given the current state of the country, the economic situation is a political priority right now, more so than ever. The budget will also be applicable to our entire team. It is very critical that we plan correctly. Let's begin then. Which branch should we discuss first? Well, we campaign on law enforcement. Let's start there. Let's discuss law enforcement. Excuse me, just move a few things out the way. I would like to have an increase in the funding of our law enforcement to increase the size of the police force and raise salaries. We have so many internal threats to tackle, and I'm already stretching my unit far too thin with limited resources allocated to me. Nia cleared her throat. Law enforcement is certainly a high priority. Excuse me, wrong inflection. Law enforcement is certainly a high priority. However, I feel tackling internal corruption is of far higher importance than increasing our police presence. Directing the funds to my department will solve the problem at its root. If corruption is still rampant, all the police in the world won't help us. We need a specialized anti-corruption police unit, which we could create if the funds were directed to me. I agree with Miss Morgan. I'm sure you do. If anybody read my review on Suzerain, who's also watching this, there is something I left in the review that I mentioned the game headset, and yeah, not subtle at all. Not even remotely. We should not reward a structure that is responsible for an ever-increasing number of human rights violations. Additionally, corruption is the reason of our government inefficiencies. It needs to be tackled. The police are there to serve and protect the people of Sordland, Miss Walda, and that's exactly what we're doing. More funding will allow us to take care of our police forces. It is quite a simple choice, given the current status of our country. I must also remind you that we promised to focus on security and law enforcement during our campaign. Because the reality is the economy can't grow if crime is everywhere. The neutral one is just like, I don't want to get in the middle of those three. Well, just stick with, I'm going to be a complete coward and just agree with Lucian. I agree with Lucian. We can't go back on our promise to the people. But what about education? Our education system is lacking, not only in funding, but also in modern curricular principles. Our data curriculum is wasting our youth. That is the reason why I advocate two things: an increase of the budget to improve access to education in rural areas, and a new education reform. To be honest, Sordland is lacking compared to Arcadia and United Cantana when it comes to education levels. The backbone of any country is its people, and we need to protect our future. We need to ensure the generation is as well educated as their counterpoints in more modern countries. Nonsense. Sordland is still here because of this very system that you insult. How can you insult a system that teaches our sons and daughters the principles of that teaches our sons and daughters the principles of national identity and pride? Patriotic education, if you will. We won't be compared to other countries. Sordland is Sordland. I agree with Lilius. Sordland is Sordland. I gotta throw Ciara a bone here. I agree with Ciara. It's high time we invest in education and enact reforms. We just won't fund it the way she thinks. She's gonna hate us, but we'll get where we need to get. Let's talk about healthcare. Our healthcare system is vast and provides free services to most of our citizens. However, the quality of our health services is far worse in low-income and rural areas. Therefore, I think we should receive more funding to address this disparity. I agree. I have recently begun an investigation into healthcare in Narble, and the numbers are not good. If we don't increase spending on health services, we at least need to maintain it. Otherwise, we are putting lives at risk. We have just started a new analysis on what would happen if a pandemic struck Sordland. This game was developed and shipped before COVID-19. Just wanted to point that out. According to the results, if our healthcare facilities remain in their current state, the death toll would be unimaginable. I'm not even talking about the damage to the economy. This is a matter of life and death. This is a matter of life and death, Mr. President, and it should be treated as such. That is indeed worrying. We should try to fix whatever we can as a government. It's time to hear the opinions on the military. What is there to hear about? I've already voiced my opinions. Lumberg is coming whether we like it or not. If not this year, next year. If not next year, the year after that. Mr. President, you and I have a shared responsibility to protect this nation from its enemies, and I intend to do so until my last breath. I will say this with certainty. If Rumberg doesn't make a move against Sordland in 2 or 3 years, my name is not Joseph Lancia. Joseph is beginning to lose control of the volume of his voice. There can be no argument against increasing the budget for our army when there's an enemy on our doorstep, waiting for us to make one wrong move. Anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool. Mr. Lancia. Right. Pardon my theatrics, Mr. President, but this is a serious matter. The future of our country is up to you, Mr. President. Well, here's an argument. Of course, the CR. Of course. Well, here's an argument. The armed forces do nothing but eat away financial resources destined for our people while stoking the fears of an upcoming war. Issues with Rumberg can be solved diplomatically. What kind of message are we sending to them and the whole world if we suddenly start ramping up our military budget? That we are ready to defend our nation, Miss Walda. Exactly. I agree with Joseph. Rumberg is a real threat and we need to be ready. Very good talking points from everyone. Well then. The time to make a decision on the budget has come. Consider it with care, Mr. President. Simon placed a stack of papers at my table. Alright. So, we have a lot to consider here. But I'm going to make my choices first, then explain them. No. Okay. Now let's go through why I made all the choices I made. First and foremost, we do need to take some action in the area of our social affairs. If, at least from all the times I played the game, if we do any sort of increase for education, especially when we're about to go into deficit spending anyway, Sarah will be rock solid in her decisions to do education reform her way. And I don't want her to do that. Because there is a way we can grow our economy and our budget through privatization that she will not accept any other way unless, like, decrease isn't going to help at all because then she'll just get pissed at us. But if we maintain it, she will begrudgingly accept that the best way to do what she wants to do is through a privatization plan. Pascal is already on board. Like, he's not as far left as Ciara on this. She will stay firm unless she's like literally right at the line and can get across it, but has no other choice but to accept it. So this is my way of nudging her across the line. Like, this is how I get privatization. By keeping her right where she is, and she is just going to have to deal with it. I could decrease the budget, and we could just be at a neutral budget, but we can go into deficit spending a little here, because we'll have options later on in the game, especially with different deals we can make diplomatically to get us back in the green. But again, since we have to do something on social affairs, and Ciara is so far left, giving the money to Pascal is a much smarter choice for our centrist run. It gives us policies that we can work with a little bit better. And hopefully he's wrong, and we won't need it in the case of a pandemic. Wink, wink, hint, hint. I think you know where this is going. We promised to do something on law enforcement. And the reality of the situation is this is the reason why I didn't ban the youth groups. Because they're not the problem, the people funding them is. And this is a much better way of getting at them than trying to pick off like the middlemen and low street soldiers, if you will. So we had, and again, political promise, we hammered this during the campaign. This one gets money no matter what. The military is a hard one, but because we are going to be doing a lot of diplomacy in the second half of the game, we're still in chapter 1. We are, by the time of the midpoint, we'll be making different deals and whatnot to build up our international support. They'll back us up. And maintaining the budget will give us different options to reform the military to where they can still do well. The point here is not to give the military everything they want because they're still a powerful institution. And if they don't like us enough, they will make it clear why. But if we maintain it, we open up different policy options, we can still modernize the military in a certain way. And it kind of forces the general staff into a corner where they have to accept some changes. Because that's really a lot of what this budget is. It's not, a lot of it isn't there, people aren't getting what they want because we don't want to spend extra money. a lot of it really is people aren't getting what they want because it's the only way I can get them to make decisions that I want them to make. So it'll force, like, Lancia is still loyal, so he'll do what he needs to do. Ciara, again, she'll see that she's right at the finish line and just needs a little push. She'll accept the choices that I want her to accept. Otherwise, she will fight us tooth and nail. But this is the best way we get stuff done, and it keeps our budget. We're dipping into deficit spending, but it keeps us at a pretty solid pace to do what we need to do. Sometimes you got to spend money. So increase for law enforcement, increase for health. And other than that, everything is maintained. Let's go. I finished allocating the government budget to the satisfaction of some cabinet members and the dismay of others. Then I knew this would define a significant part of our term. We have a deficit on our hands, where we need to resort to debt to finance future investments. This situation can have adverse effects if we don't strike a balance. Agreed. Well then, let's start with law enforcement. Nia and Lilius were both smiling. I thank you for this decision, Mr. President. I knew you would see the reason on this, considering our internal security threats are at an all-time high. I still disagree with Ms. Graff on how the money ought to be spent, but the increased funding is certainly a step in the right direction. Any statements on the matter, sir? Law enforcement is a key branch that needs a greater budget due to increased threats and the need for security. And we will make good use of these new resources to fight crime, terrorism, and subversives. Justice will be served in this nation, and having more support is a step in the right direction. Let's hear the Minister of Education. Ciara was eager to comment. Oh, I'm sure. I knew this was coming. Go ahead. Keeping the same budget would just result in the same problems. However, I prefer this over a decrease. I'll try to reform the system with my own resources. Our future depends on our children. Education is the first step in the fight against ignorance. Your expertise and passion should enable you to make the necessary changes for improvement. Thank you for your confidence in me, but without extra funding, we will have to make sacrifices, and our system will see the consequences. The military is next. Sarah clearly wasn't finished, but didn't interject. Joseph chimed in. From one loudmouth to another. Go ahead, sir. It is a shame that the military won't be getting an increase. I'll have to make sacrifices to maintain our defense. Lucian seemed as if he were about to say something, but looked down at his notepad when Joseph eyed him. With your talent and experience, you will overcome the issues our military faces. It will be harder to do so, but I will find ways. It is my duty. Joseph leaned back in his chair. And he will, Joseph is much smarter than he has that military bluster, but he is much smarter than he lets on. Let's hear from Mr. Benoit. Thank you, sir. This health budget increase will help me to focus on improvements. Our people will now be safer than ever. I'm also planning to tackle issues like the lack of rural hospitals and the recent worrying numbers of maternal deaths. Welfare must remain a priority for our term. There's no other way around it. Healthcare is very important to us, and as we move forward, it will improve drastically. It feels invigorating to have the weight of the government behind my cause. That covers all branches. Each minister will approach you with their respective policy requests and expectations over the next year. I thank you for your time and participation in this significant moment. This meeting is concluded. Regardless of what happened, I wouldn't be here without you. Don't forget that we are a team. The ministers bid their farewell, some excitedly, others dejectedly. The cabinet slowly dispersed out of the White Room. The budget for our term was concluded. All right. So our budget is set. Let's see what the wholesale press has to say. The 1954 government budget. After a marathon 18 hours of negotiation, Jesus, the Sordish government budget for the current term has been finalized. The government envisages spending of around 27 billion Sordish Rand next year, almost 16 billion Sordish Rand more than this year. The 1954 budget sees the first measures for more internal security being introduced. While the details of the allocation of the increased security funding is not yet clear, it is expected that the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Justice will both benefit from the increase. Minister of Interior Mrs. Graff has expressed her gratitude for the increase in the law enforcement budget, saying that this increase will help us bring and maintain the peace that we've all been waiting for. The Ministry of Health, one of the smaller ministries of Sordland, We'll also see his budget grow more than expected, which will especially benefit the quality of the healthcare services around the country. Minister of Health Mr. Benoit has expressed his gratitude for the increase in the healthcare budget, saying this increase will benefit everyone in Sordland. So it hits the news. So far, so good. That's basically the government. That's what I kind of expected. So increase, maintain, increase. So increases health funding. That's the only one that changed. Sweet. And we have a quick report to read, and then we'll go to the next term. Forum committees. Lucian Galay reported so far they have been able to get in total 87 signatures behind the proposal. Efforts are underway to increase the support and try to reach out to necessary members. I trust Lucian. He'll get us the signatures we need. Chapter 2. We have finally moved forward to a new chapter in the game. Lovely. All right. Again, we'll deficit spending there. We'll tackle when we come back. We'll start with the Workers' Right Act, and we have a bunch of reports we'll have to get to. A lot of reports we'll have to get to. We'll start with the news though next time too. I'm thinking that in lieu of my lack of updates on the main website for the past month, just being honest, what I most likely will do is put out another video before the end of the week. Just kind of balance it out. Because these videos are an hour long. It's a good watch, and I appreciate you guys for watching it, definitely. But yeah, we'll do that. Just kind of balance it out and continue on with the schedule until the end of the month. Until then, leave a like if you're enjoying the series so far. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. And VMsNow.com, it is VMsNow.com for more politicking, because this is how you do it here. No wide-eyed optimism here. We're doing the things that the people need, and hopefully the budget and everything will reflect that very soon. Catch you in the next one.